Let's talk about our favorite topic. So you and I had an interview 13 months ago, and it made international news. And I wanted to ask you on camera for the first time about what it's been like since then. You had said you were getting calls from former Senate colleagues who were interested. Has that continued?
Well, I've always believed that where there's something you don't understand, you should study it. I think where we as a country have not lived up to what I believe are the expectations of the American people, we have some unknown things, we have some things we don't understand. And we're not doing nearly enough to study them. I was fortunate when I was in the Senate, I got a lot of money to study these unidentified flying objects. It was really good for the country, but it's gone now. We're not studying it. And we're now having more sightings than we had before. The reason we're having more sightings is because some of the pilots are unafraid now. They come forward and talking about it, which they didn't have before. They were afraid they'd hurt in their promotions. So I do believe that there's a lot more work needs to be done in this, and I'm disappointed that more is not being done out of Washington.
You and I were on a phone call last year with one of your former colleagues in the Senate and gave him sort of a download on this, and it's amazing to me how little is known about the topic among people at that level. They just don't pay attention to it.
Well, people are afraid to deal with things they don't understand. I always kind of like to do that because I believe that, you know, you have a capacity as a legislator that you should do what they would do, your constituents, if they were in your position. So I know there are a lot of people concerned about doing more work on this, but there's nothing being done, and that is unfortunate.
Have you had any success in getting the attention of other members of the Senate or Congress or their staff in taking a look at this issue?
Yes, I have had some look at it, but the attention span seems to be fairly limited, and that's my concern. To really get into this, you have to be in it for the duration. That is, don't do it today, do it tomorrow, and do it tomorrow's after that. That's the only way we can find out what's going on. By being silent and doing nothing for research, we are accomplishing nothing except confusion.
I think people forget that there were limits on your legal ability, the rules about you lobbying your former colleagues. That's
Right.
changed, right?
Yep, that's changed. I have no problem with doing that, and I've done my best to alert people to it. Even when we were in that period of the law that you can't lobby, that didn't stop me from saying anything I wanted here, and that's what I did, and that information gets to my colleagues.
It's always been with this issue, UFOs, that there's always something more pressing for people in the Senate, in the House. And right now, the shutdown, I think, would be taking the precedence.
George, I'm not sure it's something more pressing. I think it's an issue that people do not want to deal with it. If the rule in government is, if you haven't done it before, don't do it now. And I believe we haven't done the research on this in the past. We need to do it now. And we've only done a little tiny bit. And there's so much more needs to be done. And I have found in my circulation here in Nevada, people come up all the time and say, boy, I'm so glad that you looked into this. And they are.
You know, I hear from people, and I've had arguments with them about your interest in the topic, and people will say, that's not real. Harry Reid doesn't seem like a UFO guy. And I tell them, Harry Reid has had an interest in this for decades, and you have. You've helped me a lot, and you've had even if it's just your own curiosity, you've been interested in this for a long time.
Yeah, I received a phone call from someone here in Nevada many years ago. And he said, I got this letter. I'm going to send it to you. And he sent it to me with a courier. It was from a government agency. And they wanted to go look at some of this man's property. And they did it. And that was where my focus really became determined. This is something we need to take a look at. I don't know, and whenever I have an interview, I say, if you want to talk about scientifically, I'll do it. But if you're here to talk about little green men, don't bother coming to me. And the first long interview I had was from New York Times, and I told that woman those exact words, and she lived up to it. Her long article that created a lot of interest around the world was one where she talked about science and why aren't we doing more? And that's something I still am frustrated about.
You've used that quote about you're not sure that there are little green men. You don't necessarily believe in that. We don't know. Fact is, we don't know what it is, right? Or where they're from.
We do not know. What I have learned is you cannot just hide your head and say it does. These things aren't happening. We have military installations where hundreds and hundreds of people who are there see these things. We have, you can't just throw away the view of hundreds of people and you build it up over the years. It's thousands of people. They see things. And the man that wrote me the letter was a physicist, a PhD. And he said, I know about rockets, where they came from, how they are now, what they're going to be in the future. But if all these sightings, we do not have vehicles that a human being could live in them with these starting and stopping. So I can't imagine why it isn't something we should be concerned about, because I'll bet you anything that China's spending some money checking this out. I'll bet you anything KGB Putin is spending some money checking this out. And what we should be doing, rather than hiding from each other, we should be working in cooperation with each other, because it's a worldwide phenomenon, and we should all be interested in it.
You know, the Pentagon has files. There are additional files and reports that were compiled as part of the study that you initiated. Did you get very deep into that stuff? Do you read it? Are you aware of how deep it goes or what's in it?
I didn't read all of it. My staff did, and I spent a lot of time with my staff going over what was in that. It was quite a lot of material. So for me to tell you I read every word of it, if somebody saw that stack of paper, they said, well, I'm not sure he's telling the truth. So truthfully, yes, I had 2 staff people that worked this issue a lot, and we spent a lot of time together.
And what jumps out at you? I mean, is there substantial information and documentation in those reports?
In my opinion, this is something that we should be studying. And as I said, it's a worldwide phenomenon, not just here in the United States. There are certain places we really don't understand why, that there's more occurrences and have been over a long time. There are different parts of the world even where there are a lot of these occurrences occur. But we haven't done enough about it. I mean, I think we should have congressional hearings on it. I think we should, I think the Defense Department should be looking into this. I think that the science and technology, we have an Office of Science. They should be looking into some of this stuff, asking Congress for money to do it.
Do you happen to know, or how would you characterize the level of interest on Capitol Hill? We've heard assorted reports about witnesses, pilots and such, appearing before Senate staffers, armed services, giving testimony about what they've seen. Is there, to your knowledge,
George,
ongoing?
as you know, I've asked members of the Senate to take a look at some of the stuff their staff has seen. I've got no reports that they've done that yet, which is too bad. It is a subject people are afraid of. They do not want their constituents to say, why is he spending his time on that? As you know, and you've talked earlier in this interview, some people say, why is Reid doing this? He doesn't know anything about science. Well, I'm doing it out of sheer curiosity. You're right. I never took a physics course in high school or college. I never took a trigonometry course. I'm not great at math. They didn't give me much of a background in Searchlight to do that stuff. But I am terribly curious and interested. And I wish more people were.
Just to share with you a letter. This was released, made public a week ago through a Freedom of Information Act request. It was a request filed by your friend John McCain last year. He asked for a list of all the reports generated by the study that you sponsored. Did you ever talk to John McCain about this?
Typical John McCain. He was head of the Armed Services Committee, and he knew everything that was going on in the country. He was tireless in his work. How he died as he was about 80, but every weekend he went someplace as part of his job overseas. Sure, John knew what I was doing. I mean, he didn't hide the fact that he was interested also. That's why he wrote the letter.
The reports that were listed, that were produced by that study, there's 38 of them listed there. They're very far out technology ideas, what technology would be like.
But they've also, blacked out some of the stuff in the reports.
Here's one of them, for example. This is a study produced by Dr. William Culberth at UNLV. It's a detecting hypersonic vehicles, which you could understand, well, a detection system would tell us about UFOs, but it could also tell us about Russian missiles that might be coming our way. I mean, there's practical benefits to these kinds of studies.
Of course.
You had given an interview last March to a print journalist and talked about the files and studies that had been produced by the program that you initiated not being released. Does it bother you that that information is still being kept secret?
Well, I think that my purpose was to learn more about this. And it's clearly evident to me that my learning more about it doesn't solve the problem. A lot of people should do this. I think the study, if it were made public, would draw attention from academics at the university level, and I think that's where we need to go.
Doesn't look like there's any great interest on the part of the Pentagon to release this stuff, though.
Well, the Pentagon is a very, very large bureaucracy, and they've got a lot of things to deal with, and they don't want something new to deal with.
You've seen the statements from the Pentagon about the end of the program, the study that was out here in Nevada, based here in Nevada. They said basically it ended because they found nothing of interest. What do you think about that?
Well, maybe they didn't read the report. I mean, it was a voluminous report with lots of good stuff in it, and it's too bad they said that.
You just say that is false, that it didn't.
Oh yeah, no question about it. There's no question about it that that letter was written by somebody that either wasn't telling the truth or didn't know the facts.
2009, you wrote a letter to the Secretary of Defense in which you said, "Look, we'd like to make this into a special access program. We've got great stuff. We're making great progress. We want to continue." What was the intention with making it into a special access program?
Well, there are certain things that we had learned in our work, that there were places that we needed to go, that people had certain things, equipment and other stuff, that we needed to see. And you couldn't do it unless you got clearance from the Pentagon, and they wouldn't give it to us.
It suggests that maybe there are other studies or programs that might shed light on this mystery?
Other programs that have been done and information they have, including different pieces of evidence.
Do you know what those pieces are?
No, I've just only heard rumors, and I'm not going to get into the rumors, but that's why I wanted the special access to go there. And if I couldn't go, I'd send my staff to look at it.
I've heard people say Harry Reid wanted to turn this into a special access program so it had no oversight. You'd take all that information and make it secret. Mm-hmm. That was not the intention, though, right? Is not make it secret.
Well, here's what everyone should appreciate. There are certain things that need not have everything being made public. Certain things end by having too much publicity. My thought was that let's see if we can keep this so that there's not a lot of publicity on it. And let's find out if we get some facts. And if we have some facts that are decent, then we turn over to the public. But in the meantime, I think what we do is hurt ourselves.
You know, I'm familiar with some of what the Bass study was able to do in a couple of years, I think about if they had been allowed to continue, how far along they would be now. I mean,
Yeah. We as a country are, we as a country are certainly not doing what we should do. This is an area that is important to not only our country, but to the world. And I know that other countries are doing more than we're doing. And I think that that's not good.
there are those who think we're on the edge of disclosure, that any day now they're going to open up the doors and show us the saucers or open the files. I'm not as encouraged. What about you?
Well, I don't think I'm even close to that. I think before we get to that, I think we need to do a little work. And we're not doing enough scientific research. And there are people hungry to do that. We have academics who are trained in all the sciences. A grant to a college would be a tremendous help. They could put it out to bid, like they do, find out who would do the best job. But the way it is now, we're doing nothing.
You've said about you don't think it's little green men, and we had a lot of speculation about where these vehicles are from. They're far more advanced than anything known to us. Is it possible that there's no one who knows the ultimate answer, what the truth
I think
is?
now, and the reason I'm so terribly interested in this is I don't think no one has the answers. And that is too bad, because there are answers out there. But we're not going to get answers just by hoping they come. It can have to take some work.
The idea of disclosure, have you had conversations with colleagues about the wisdom of letting all this loose? Is the public ready for it? Depends on what it is, I guess.
I don't think that Congress can make this decision on their own. They could try to pass a law, but that would create a lot more problems than it would solve, because there's a big public debate on this. I don't think at this stage would do a lot of good. Pentagon needs to get somebody within the Pentagon that's willing to do something that's a little different.
There are multiple interests there, as you learned with your program. There are a variety of reasons why people would oppose it. Religious grounds, or they just didn't want to spend the money, or I don't know, maybe some people are worried about the topic.
It's unbelievable. The military helped develop I call it a big X-ray machine. From an airplane, you look, see what's in the ground. Archaeologists, anthropologists have been complaining, that's unfair. That's not the way to get things done. They want to go chop up the jungle, I guess. And that's the same thing we're having here. It's people don't like to do things that are new and different.
Well, that would include some of the Pentagon who opposed your program.
For sure.
It would seem to me that even if somebody in Congress could get a new program going, they would still face a lot of opposition to it, that there are those who don't want to go down this road, this kind of level of inquiry.
There's a rule in government, if it hasn't been done before, we're not going to do it now. And that's admonition is certainly throughout the Pentagon and most levels of Congress.
Are you amazed by the level of media interest that your comments, tiny comments even, one sentence line, would go all over the world so quickly?
Yeah, I frankly was kind of surprised. But I was satisfied when that first article was written in the New York Times that the woman wrote from a scientific perspective. And that's what we need to do.
Do you intend to stay active in this? I mean, you had told me before you consider it part of your legacy now, that you're proud to be out in front on it.
Well, I am a curious person. I feel inadequate in the sciences for a lot of reasons. Maybe I just didn't have a scientific mind, but my background wasn't that good to create an interest in it. But I am terribly interested now. And I just think that it's something that I'm going to try to keep up on for as long as I can.
Last March, you issued a challenge to journalists. You said, look, you reporters should get off your butts and go find these files, find these studies, because it's not classified.
I think that modern day journalists are like a lot of modern day politicians. They're They're afraid to take chances. We need journalists who can be given a free rein to write a story more than 4 paragraphs long. Allow them to go and study this issue for a while. We don't have much in the way of journalism anymore that allows that, and that is really too bad. Some of the great findings in the history of our country and the world, frankly, have been journalists who are very inquisitive, can write a sentence, and are given a little bit of time to study. Right now, there's so much pressure. Like we have a 12 o'clock coming out on BuzzFeed, you got to get that taken care of, and then something else an hour later, and so they have a lot of stuff that is not well done.
You know, somebody I've seen who's taken an interest in it is Tucker Carlson, and I don't know how often you watch Fox News just to check out what's going on over there, but Tucker Carlson does a program almost once a month on this subject, and I don't know if they're trying to get...
I'm glad to hear that. As you know, I'm not a big Fox News fan, but I love to watch it when there's some big hot thing going and go there and they're just off watching the ball game.
I just wondered if Tucker Carlson was doing that to get Donald Trump's attention. It's amazing, for as often as this has appeared on Fox, that Trump has not taken an interest in the subject.
Please, you'll screw it up forever. Don't have him get involved.
Matt, anything else?
How do you reckon, and you can answer this to George, how do you reconcile your religious beliefs and this study? I mean, some people have a problem with it. How do you negotiate that?
Well, it's pretty easy. Anyone that's looked at Mormonism at all understands that we believe that there are other worlds, and so that's pretty easy for me.
Perfectly comfortable with it then.
I mean, that's one of the reasons people look askew at Mormonism, because what are these people? Are they crazy? They're talking about other worlds. Well, we don't. Joseph Smith, when he was murdered at 38, he came up with this idea. He claimed he got it from, as we believe, from divine intervention. But he was right, and others are wrong, because I think there's no question that there are other worlds. So my religious beliefs are compatible, 100%.
Wherever they are from, what do you think their interest is in us? What is it? Why are they buzzing around in the skies, and why are they interfering with the military?
Well, I would just turn that around. Why are we interested in them? Same answer to your question. Because we don't know.
You've seen these videos that have been analyzed by the Pentagon, by Lou Elizondo and people like that, the gimbal and the tic-tac. Those are not our craft. They're not birds, they're not flares, they're something we wish we had.
And it's something that hasn't started happening yesterday. When I first went to get some money to study this, the 2 people I had to go to were Senator Inouye from Hawaii, Senator Stevens from Alaska. They controlled defense spending, especially the dark and black money. And I first mentioned that. Senator Stevens said, "I'm so glad you came and talked about this." He was a World War II pilot, and he said he's worried his whole life about what that was off to his wing. He tried to get rid of it, he couldn't. He did everything he could, went down, ground control, saw nothing up there. He knows there was something. So it's not as if it just, people today started, this has been going on for a while.
When you and I have talked before, well, about tic-tac, you've seen people try to explain it away. It was flares, it was birds. It's kind of an insult to our best pilots and our sensor systems that show this was real. It could do things we can't do, and we don't understand it.
Well, this has been going on for a long time. All these sightings are said to have been set off a rocket in California or something, but people do not want, who are in positions of responsibility, whether it's the Pentagon or whatever it might be, they don't want to have to try to explain something that's many times not explainable.
You've mentioned to me a couple of times about particular incidents that you've read about over military bases, nuclear bases, very dramatic encounters.
Yep.
Those were real.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's no question it happened. they couldn't have set off one of the missiles if they'd wanted to. Everything went down. And this wasn't one night watchman that saw this, it was a whole crew.
Yeah, the nuclear weapons part is pretty scary, and underwater. You've read reports
yes.
about USOs.
Yeah, the underwater stuff is something I've only picked up the last 6-8 months, but it's coming in a lot more with some terrific accounts of things in the water they don't understand.
If some guy from a secret intel 3-letter agency came and told you, Senator Reid, we've got one of these flying saucers in the hangar somewhere, would you be surprised?
Oh, I'd be really surprised, yes, but you know, there are people out there who claim they've seen them and felt them. It's hard to believe, but that's what they say.
No one's told you that we have one of those things?
No one's told me.
You mentioned in a recent interview about visits to Area 51. I had never wanted to ask you on the record because I know there are limits on what you can say, but you've been there multiple times.
I've been there quite a few times, and it was something that was really necessary, especially with the Soviets, with their satellites. Today I see things that were experimental up there that are now everyday deals.
It's a place where the Cold War was won, the work that was done out there.
Yeah, they did some amazing things. They were in at Tonopah. They had another base up there that was stunning. The stealth airplane was developed there.
I think you and I are both in the same position in that we would like to know the answer to what it is that's flying around out there while we're still here.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. It's ever going to happen.
George, I don't know either. But I know one thing. We're not doing the right thing by ignoring it.
Okay. Anything else, Matt? You want to say anything else?
Nope.
Okay.